How many of you are superstars and you've been here the last several weeks? Yes. All right. Okay. We are doing, if you're like, no, I haven't been, what we're doing is we're taking one of my classes that I've been teaching for a number of years, and we're just sort of taking from that and giving you a sample. So people have been a little confused. They're like, is this the class? Is this not the class? It's like when you go to Chuck E. Cheese and you sit on the thing and you pretend to play the video game, and you're not really playing the video game, but you drive the car and pretend. You remember doing that? Yes. I've realized that my daughter doesn't know the difference, and so I think I'm going to go for free from now on and not pay them any more money because she thinks she's playing the game. It's like that. It's like this is kind of the class. It's not the full shebang. And so if you ever want to come, I will do it. We will do it again. I do it every year. I just wasn't able to this year, which is why we're using this time. And so this is kind of the sample version. We talked about how the gospel is both a story and an announcement. I said that in the beginning of our series, we're going to talk about the gospel as a story. And I said that you can't explain the gospel without some kind of story, even if you make it super basic. Even if you say something like, we are sinners, but Jesus came to save us, and he rose from the dead, and if we have faith in him, we will live with him forever. Even if it's like that simple, that's still a story. It's a really short story, but that's still a story. You really can't explain the gospel without telling a story. And so the gospel is partly, or one way to look at it, is a story. And so for the last 3 weeks, we've been going through the Bible 3 times with 3 different themes. And we could go through the Bible with a lot of themes. I said that the gospel is like an accordion. And how big is an accordion? We say it's this big and it's this big. It just depends on how much you want to expand it. My hope for you is that your accordion will expand, right? Your version of the gospel as you understand it and as you tell it will get bigger and bigger. It won't always be that first little story I said, and you'll try to live off of that for the rest of your life. That's not enough. There's more to it than that. We could also say that the gospel is like maybe a piece of art. And we look at it, maybe it's a statue, right? We look at it, and then you walk over here and you look at it from this angle. And then you walk over here and you look at it from this angle. And you kind of walk around it, and you got to like touch it and see it and experience it. And it's how you look at it changes over time and from different angles. And so as we look through different lenses, as we look through these different themes, we're going to see different themes in the Bible. It's not that any one is the sum total of what's there. It's that we're looking at it from different angles and different perspectives. But the gospel is also an announcement, and that's more what we're going to talk about going forward, is the fact that the gospel is saying something has been done, period, full stop. Something has happened, and then we respond to that. What has happened? And so the next 2 weeks are kind of transitional between those two things. We're going to talk about how the story really focuses itself on Jesus, and how the whole story is the story of the gospel first, and therefore leads into our lives and our experience. But it's not our life and our experience first. And then we're going to talk about why we have to respond to the gospel. In the Bible, it says, obey the gospel. How do you obey a story? How do you obey an announcement? That's a really weird thing. It's a strange idea. But the gospel is both of those things. And so we're going to talk about how we respond to it in both of those ways. And so the next 2 weeks is kind of transitional. These are the 2 weeks where we're going to talk about how we find the gospel and Jesus at the center of the Bible. And most of us would say, of course I do that. Why did I even show up tonight? And I'm, again, like I said last week, I'm going to argue that we actually don't naturally do that. We put ourselves at the center of the Bible, and we lose Jesus in the process, and it's to our detriment, and we really lose everything. So I'm going to steal a little bit from you over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to take away, maybe 3 weeks, I'm going to take something away. At some point, you're going to go, but I liked that. I wanted to read the Bible only like that. And I'm going to kind of take it away for a minute, and we're going to kind of polish it, and we're going to add some things to it and beef it up and like turbocharge it. And then I'm going to give it back to you, and you're going to go, oh, now this is better. I hope. Okay. I hope that's your response. All right. Let me go through real quick. I will give you 1,000,000 points. Did anybody actually watch the 20-minute kind of breeze through on the line, the story? Yes, Chantal did. You win 1,000,000 points. They're exchangeable for a high five later, Chantal. Yes. All right. Because the rest of you haven't, I'm going to give you an even faster version, and we're just going to go through kind of those main points. We talked through them 3 times with a little more detail. I'm just going to breeze through them so that you understand the story a little bit. So we start with, what starts the Bible? In the beginning, creation. We begin with creation. God made the world, and the world was round. Who said that? Carol? Out. The world was round. I like it. When I left junior high ministry, I was like, I won't have to deal with this anymore. And then Carol came along. I love it. Yes, the world was round. The world was good, right? Everything was good. God put a man in this world. He told him to continue this creation. Everything's good except that he was alone, so God brought him a woman, and together they're supposed to subdue the earth, fill it, and carry on this creation process. Pretty quickly, though, they fall away. We call this the fall because they fall away from their purpose, their relationship with God, and their relationship with one another once they bring in sin into the process. And we say that the whole world, in some capacity, fell at this point, right? It falls away. And so they're banished from this garden. They're sent out, but they're not punished that day. Instead, they continue to multiply and multiply. But as they multiply and people multiply, we have wicked people, you multiply wicked people, then wickedness multiplies, and so God has to press reset with this flood. And so in the flood, God wipes the world almost all the way back to creation, where we just have this water and this one family who's saved in order to repopulate the world and press reset, start again. But guess what? Sin, we said, got on the ark with them. They get off the ark and they repopulate, but so does sin, and the people want to be in one place, make a name for themselves, honor themselves, not be scattered, which is exactly all the opposite of what God had planned for them. And they make this tower at a place called Babel, where God confuses their languages, and they go out in now multitudes of peoples rather than just as individuals. Now they're in these cultural groups, and God has now thwarted their plan to make this all about them and not fill the earth and not subdue it and not honor him. We zoom in from all these people to one person in Genesis 12, which is Abraham, and God promises Abraham that through him, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Anyone who blesses him will be blessed. Anyone who curses him will be cursed. He'll have this great land and this multitude of descendants, and one of those descendants will bring this blessing to all. And so Abraham, by the end of his time, he hasn't really fully had that promise come to him. He has a son. He has a little tiny bit of this land that God promised him. And so this one son, though, has sons who then have more sons, and they multiply and multiply in a time period we call the patriarchs. And they go down to Egypt, and they flourish in Egypt until they're enslaved in Egypt. And they eventually exit Egypt in what we call the Exodus. And God leads them towards the land that he had originally promised Abraham, but they're faithless and they don't want to go in because they're too afraid of who's there. And so God allows them for 40 years to wander around in the wilderness until that generation dies out and their children can come in and inherit the land, which they do in a time called the conquest. They come in, they fight the tribes that are there, they divide up the land, and they govern it through a series of like kind of warlord general guys who are called the judges. And the judges aren't really kings over the whole place, and everything's a little bit chaotic. And it says that people still did what was right in their own eyes because they didn't have a king. And so eventually they call for a king, and the king that God gives them is Saul, and Saul leads to to David, who leads to Solomon, and they establish this flourishing, great kingdom. But Solomon in 1 Kings 11 begins to lead the people away towards idolatry, and this continues until after him, the kingdom splits. We call it the divided kingdom, splits north and south. The north, always bad. The south, mostly bad. The north goes into exile as a result. The south then 100 years later goes into exile, where they're taken away amongst the nations that they wanted to adopt their gods. And then for 400, they return, they rebuild the temple, but it's not quite what they wanted. And the prophets tell them that this person, this Elijah figure, is going to return to them, and they're just left waiting for about 400 years. We call the silent years, or the intertestamental period, where things start to change. We get all of a sudden like a change in the way that they do their religion. We get people called Pharisees and Sadducees, and there's Greek culture and Greek language, and everything kind of changes for 400 years. And they're under the Romans' control. And then Jesus shows up on the scene, and he begins to tie together these threads from the Old Testament that they're going, what about this? And where does this lead? But they miss it. They don't understand. Most of them don't understand that Jesus is what the Old Testament had all been leading up to. They either fail to recognize him or just can't get over their jealousy of him. And so they reject him, kill him. He dies and rises again. And his followers form into the early church, taking the gospel to around the Roman Empire, around the Mediterranean, from Jerusalem to Rome. And then there's these predictions of what will happen at the end when Jesus will return and establish his kingdom over the whole earth, back to Eden, but better, where he's ruling and reigning with us, present with us forever and ever. And so that's kind of the gist of the whole Bible story. The gist. So that's not, you're like, I got it now. No, you don't. There's a lot more to it. And I don't either. So like, we're going to have a Q&A in a few weeks, and I'm worried that someone's going to be like, when did the Syrians, blah, blah. I don't know that. So don't get ahead of yourself. Okay. Let me ask you a few questions and see what you think. I'm not going to ask you to answer these, but see what you think. Would you agree with these statements as we go into looking at the Bible a little bit differently? Number one, God is primarily interested in my behavior. Two, it doesn't matter if the events of the Bible are historically true, whether or not they really ever happened. I am the guide of my own life path or story. I give Scripture its significance, and the Bible is about me. Probably you wouldn't agree with these. Probably. Maybe some of you would. Maybe some of you would go, I would agree with one, but not all. I don't know. I'm not going to poll you because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I think quietly we read the Bible, study the Bible exactly like this. And I'm going to try to prove that to you in the next 3 weeks. And you're going to get offended. And you're going to be like, well, what's wrong with that? And aren't you taking this too far? And then you're going to email me. It's cool. I do this every year. I get emails every year. It's actually good because, as I said at the very beginning, if it's uncomfortable, that means you're wrestling with it, you're considering it, and you're learning somewhere in there. Learning is often an emotional experience. It's hard, especially when someone comes at something that you hold so dear. And I'm going to come at some of how you read the Bible in the morning with your coffee. Some of the magnets that might be on your fridge. I'm not come against those magnets. They're probably good magnets. But I'm going to say that the magnet on your fridge is there for one reason when really there's so much more behind the magnet on the fridge. And if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, my magnets don't have Scripture on them, that's okay too. All I'm saying is at some point, I'm gonna wound something in you over the next 3 weeks. Can you do that? Are you adults? Can you manage this? You can manage this. Okay. I'm going to argue that we, myself included, okay, I didn't come up with this from nowhere, myself included, I think this is how we approach the Bible. This is how we approach the Bible. And so we're going to address some of those things as we go. I'd also like you to ask these questions of yourself. Would you agree with these statements? I feel like there's much in the Bible that I'm missing out on. There's more there, and people seem to see it, and Pastor Brian seems to talk about it, but I don't know how he got there. I'm missing something. There's more there, and I just can't see it. I'm tired of not measuring up to the Bible. I don't like reading it because it just tells me how badly I'm doing. This is why I don't like reading leadership books. People give them to me, and I'm like, great, a book on how I'm not a good leader. It's like if you're a bad cook, and someone gives you a cookbook. Like, you don't... That's sometimes how we approach the Bible. Oh, here's a book telling me I'm lame, right? I don't know how to help others care about the Bible. Maybe you serve in one of our ministries and you're like, how in the world do I get a 5th grade boy to care about anything in the Bible that's not somebody shooting arrows at somebody else? Like, how do I make you care about this? How do I care, maybe? And then 4, the truths of Scripture seem distant and disconnected from my real life. I come on Wednesday, I come on Sunday, I hear nice things, that's great, nice theories, Andrew, Brian, whoever, but that doesn't help me when I go clock in on Monday. That doesn't help me when I drop my kids off at school on Tuesday. That doesn't help me when I need to figure out dinner on Friday, right? That doesn't help me in my real life. It's not going to help you with dinner, but you know what I mean. I don't know, number 5, I don't know what God wants for my life story. I struggle and grapple with, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what I'm called to? And should I be pursuing my passions? Should I be happy or not? What should I be doing? Am I failing? And is God going to get upset if I don't figure this out soon, right? Let me show you a video. In all the years I've shown this video, I do not know what language is being spoken. If you can figure it out, I will also give you a high five and thank you for, I have no idea. It's some European language that I don't know. So we're going to try to watch this. I hope the tech works. This is a very theologically rich video. It's not. It's funny, but I want you to watch it because I do have a point behind it. Okay. And if you've taken my class and you're like, I'm bored right now, I've seen all of this presentation 5 times, I apologize, but the rest of you haven't. So here we go. Good video. You can kind of see it. I'll describe it if you can't.
Mark, wat doe je? Wat doe je, Rakke? Ben je wat doen, man? Wat doe je, Rakke? Wat doe je? Hé, dat knopje daar aan de... Ja, dat knopje.
De troepie.
Lekker, Mark! Hé, aanzetten, dat knopje aanduwen. Ja! Hé,
Okay. What's my point? This is how I think we use the Bible, all right? You're gonna go through the next few weeks and you're gonna be like, Andrew, no, I get something out of the Bible when I read it, the way that you're telling me maybe not to read it. I understand you do. What I'm saying, I'm not saying, so many people misunderstand when I teach on this stuff, and they're like, so you're saying don't do X, Y, and Z. And I'm saying, no, don't do only X, Y, and Z. You need A, B, C through Z, right? You need the whole thing. I'm trying to plug your, whatever that is. What is that called? Jackhammer. Is that simple? Is that what it, yeah, okay. I always thought that was the big one. This is the same thing. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to plug your jackhammer in and then tell you just push in. Let the tool do the work, right? That's what our dads always told us, like, let the tool do the work. The Bible is going to do a lot of the work for you if you just learn how to use it a little bit more adeptly. Does that make sense? It will make more sense, I hope, after this, okay? There's this amazing story. I love it in the Bible. It's King Josiah. He's a very young king, and he comes to the throne, and he's like 16. He comes at 8, and then by the time he's 16, these priests bring him this book, and they're like, "We've found a book in the storehouse of the temple." And it's like, "Oh, what book is it?" It turns out it's the Bible. And it's this amazing scene where it's been so ignored and so lost that they feel like they've discovered something that was there the whole time and their whole society's built on. And Josiah leads this revival based on this moment of, oh, we found this book that you have to see. And I want this, my hope is with this material, maybe it's a bit ambitious, but my hope is that you would go, oh my gosh, I've discovered the Bible that's been there the whole time. I've discovered this thing that was always there. I just haven't unlocked some of what's there because I've been trying to, and I'm getting somewhere, right? He's going to eventually, he will break down that wall in 3 months' time, right? But his arms are going to hurt. He's going to be the orthopedic surgeon by that time. And so it's going to get there, but it's not really going to help him. And what I want to do is just kind of go, unlock. There's so much more here that maybe we're missing. Because for me, a lot of this was I was listening to this thing about preaching that had nothing to do with this. I thought it was a completely other title. I was listening to this. Do you remember iTunes U? Anybody? That was the best. They took it away. It was the best. It was like recordings of college classes. That was awesome. Now it's gone. And so I was listening to one from a seminary, and they started to talk about this, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was hiking, I remember, in Menifee, and I was like, this is what I couldn't put words to. This is what we're missing. This, yes. And it kind of unlocked this thing, and I went on this now 10-year journey of let's figure this out a little bit better. Am I a genius about it? No. Do I have all the answers? No. Am I trying to toot my own horn? No. What I'm saying is there's these moments where you go, oh my gosh, this is what's always been there, and I've missed it. It's just because I looked at it from the wrong, all it was I looked from the wrong angle, right? And so I want this to be one of those. All right. Let me give you an analogy. And nobody asked me when I started ministry how my design skills were. Apparently that's like the thing you have to do now, and Brian's all good at it. I'm not. So this is the best of Microsoft PowerPoint's built-in icon system. Are you ready for that amazingness? Here we go. Okay, here's my water analogy. I'm gonna give you 2 water analogies today. Here's my first one. We don't go water trees from the ocean. And if you're like a botanist, you're like, no, these certain mangroves in Madagascar do what? Forget it. I don't know about that. But we don't typically water trees with ocean water. Why? It's too salty. Okay, that's the only problem. It's too salty. I don't know if you can read that. If not, it's just basically the things that I'm saying. So I'll read it to you, actually. It says, just as we would not water a tree directly from the ocean, we do not ignore Jesus by trying to find meaning directly for ourselves from the events of the Old Testament. Okay? Rather, like ocean water evaporating, the events and people recorded in the Old Testament are significant in themselves, but they lead to Christ. Jesus embodies the fullest meanings of the things pointing to him, and he changes lost Israel and fallen man by embodying and reliving their story with a new trajectory. We demonstrated that a little bit over the last 3 weeks. Like rainfall in a tree, we're the outcome of what Jesus did. Sent to bring him to the world, we find what the Bible means for us in Jesus. So we don't go immediately, like the tree, we don't go immediately and drink the ocean water. We wait until it's gone through this process, right? We wait until it's gone through this process of what does this mean about Jesus and what does that mean for me? What is this that Jesus does, corrects, changes, embodies, fulfills, etc., and what does that mean for me? And so we're going to play that out in a few ways over the next couple weeks, is this kind of idea. And I'm going to give you kind of a low-hanging fruit story as an example. And I know some of you, even if you haven't taken my class, you've heard me talk about this. This was the one that when I was listening to that iTunes U thing, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. It was Tim Keller talking about the story of David and Goliath. We've heard the story, yes, of David and Goliath. Okay, even if you're like not a believer, you've heard the story of David and Goliath. There's like, it's out there. People know this story, right? It's a famous one. Okay. All right, so in the story of David and Goliath, we normally, and I'm sure if you've been around church for a long time, you've heard it taught in this way. Just like David relied on the Lord and his strength to overcome the giants that faced him, you can overcome the giants in your life, be it a job interview, a test, a marital problem, money issues, whatever it is, you can overcome the giants in your life with the Lord's strength and for the Lord's honor. Is that completely false and evil and wrong? No, it's not completely false and evil and wrong. But let's see what happens when we put ourselves in different characters in the story. So first, David is this very unlikely hero who comes along and sees God's honor being maligned by his enemies and sees God's people who should be honoring his name, shaming him by not doing anything about it, not trusting him to fight the enemies that God has said that they'd have victory over. And so they're allowing themselves to be taunted. And so David goes and he understands the Lord's power, and he goes out and with very unlikely weaponry, not a sword and not armor, that wasn't his way, and it didn't fit, it didn't work for him, but rather with this weapon that nobody expected, in an unexpected, odd fashion to them, he takes the place of the human king who should have been able to do this, and he goes past all these soldiers whose job it was to do this, and he goes out and he faces the enemy that they couldn't face, defeats him, and by his defeating the enemy they couldn't defeat, all of them instantly, without having moved a muscle, are victorious because of his victory. And that should make us go, that sounds less like me and more like what Jesus did, okay? If we are like Saul in the story, then we are the person who it was our responsibility, our job, our expectation probably of ourselves and other people's expectation of us that we should have been able to go out and to defeat the enemy that was before us, but we, out of fear and inability and not being able to live up to everything that we thought of ourselves and that other people thought of us, we cowered and allowed somebody else to do what we couldn't do. And so we even get upset with him for having victory because then he got glory and we didn't get glory. That actually sounds more like me. That sounds more like the Pharisees. That sounds more like anybody who expects themselves righteously to be able to conquer our ultimate enemy. The Bible says that our ultimate enemies are sin and death, okay? And so if we are like the Israelite soldiers, then we watch this hero who shouldn't be the hero, who seemed weak, who seemed to use odd methods and goes right out past us. And because he wins, we win and we did nothing. And that actually does sound a lot like our position with Jesus, who is, Hebrews calls him the author and finisher of our faith, or author, the word can also be champion, our representative hero. If we are like the Philistines in the story, then we are those who were the enemies of God's people. And if you actually go back and were to read this story, it's in 1 Samuel 16 and 17. One of those two, or both of those two. It's back there. If you were to go back and read this, what was on the table is a detail that we often miss. What was on the table was that, do you remember? I'll give you a million more points. You can beat Chantal. If the Israelites lost, do you remember what was going to happen? Yes, who said that? Some voice of, was that Raphael? Yes. They were supposed to be the Philistine slaves, and vice versa. If the Philistines lost, they were supposed to be the Israelites' slaves. All that had to happen was that one of the two people in the middle had to win, and then everybody wins because they represent everybody. And so the Philistines end up, because their dude loses, they lose. What would have been best for them would have been that they had actually become Israel's slaves, been part of that community, and eventually part of that society, understanding who the true God was, like other people who had joined themselves to Israel and had then gained the blessings that came with being part of Israel, like we talked about with Ruth a few weeks ago. And so, are we like them? Well, yeah. If we're Gentiles, we become part of God's people when we lose, when we surrender, when we are conquered. The best thing for us is actually to be conquered by the true King. Okay. So when we look at this story, is that the sum total of what's going on in that story? No, it's also part of, which I'll talk about in a minute, it's also part of the Bible story. It's part of the conquest story. It's part of the establishment of David as the king. So it's part of the story, but when we look at the story and want to take a moral lesson from the story, we tend to put ourselves in the best places in the Bible. There's a place in Proverbs where it says, when you go to a feast, don't take the best seat at the feast, but take a lower seat, because it's always better to get promoted by the host than it is to get demoted and be ashamed. And I think when we come to the Bible, we do the same. We put ourselves in the best place, and God goes, oh, now I have to humble you. Instead of going, I think I'm like the Philistines in this story, and God goes, great, let me move you up in that, those who are humble will be exalted, and those who are prideful will be humbled, who exalt themselves will be humbled. And so we often need to take the worst parts in the Bible, give God the best parts, best places, the best positions in the story, and then we go, oh my gosh, this automatically changes the way that I see Jesus is my hero in a way bigger way than this. He defeated a way bigger enemy than the Philistines, and he gained a way bigger thing than just Israel's safety. So much more really is spiritually, I think, happening under there, because it's pointing to Jesus and the greater, bigger thing that he did. We call this typology, which really sounds fancy, and it's really not that fancy. Typology, or types, are persons, places, things, or events in the story that are significant on their own. It's significant that David defeated Goliath. It's not just an analogy of Jesus. It's important in and of itself. But ultimately, it points to a greater significance in Jesus and what he does. Ultimately, it's going to say, this is a version, but not the full version. Let's move forward to the full version is what's going on there. A few examples, and I've talked about a couple of these over the last few weeks, and there are many more. I picked some real easy ones for you, but there's some people in the Bible who point us towards Jesus. Abel, and then Seth, who kind of replaces Abel once Abel is killed, are sons of Eve who overcome man's wickedness. That points us to Jesus. Noah is the one righteous man saved, while all unrighteous are condemned. We said that in Jesus we have the one righteous man who's condemned, so that all others could be saved. So there's an opposite thing going on. Joseph is the innocent person rejected and accused to provide for all, as Jesus is a greater version of that. We said that Moses is a mediator between God and man, sent to lead all to rescue. David is a king after God's own heart, anointed over all Israel forever. And Solomon is the king of peace, to whom the nations come to know wisdom. And so all these people are again, we said, close but no cigar. They all point to something and someone greater than them. So my first water analogy was, what's that called? The evaporation thing. What do they call that in science class? Water cycle. Is it that simple? Okay, the water cycle. My second one is a river, and it's kind of a blunt river, because when I put this together, it's all that fit on my screen. So in a river, rivers don't just pop out of nowhere. They form from tributaries. Remember life science, earth science, whatever class you took in 7th grade? Okay. So the tributaries are like brooks and streams and creeks, and I don't know the difference between those. I think they're all the same thing, and someone lied to us, but they're just all these little, and they add up and add up and add up and add up and add up until they get to the big river, right? The big river. Have any of you seen like an actual big river? I don't even think we have one here, but like I saw one in Ukraine, or you've maybe been over the Mississippi, like a big river. So I want you to think of like, oh, this big river formed from like the little like driplets everywhere, right? It just all comes together until it reaches the big river. So the analogy that I use is that the themes, the types, the details, the characters in the story, they're all leading us into the gospel. They're all leading us to what God is doing, but not always directly. You don't always go to like, so like the Nile. People, David Livingstone, he was originally in Africa, and he was being funded by the Royal Geographical Society to find the source of the Nile. That was like how he originally, he was like, I'm going to go do that. Somebody else figured it out. But for years, they were trying to find, where does the Nile come from? And it comes from this little mountain spring in Burundi. And it's like, how does this even like become the Nile? It's just this like, bloop, bloop, bloop. It just grows and grows and adds more to it and adds more to it and adds more to it, right? So all these things, we don't go to them and go, oh, this little spring in Burundi, this is the full Nile River. No, it's part of that. It's part of the whole process. You understand so far, life science? Yes, you're with me? Earth science, I guess? Okay, so we're building and we're building and we're building, but we don't go to the little piece and go, this is the whole thing. I'm going to just stay here. This is it. Plop my canoe down in this tiny little creek in like Murrieta. We got to find the river, right? Okay. I don't even think ours lead to a river, so maybe a bad example, but you know what I mean? The Rocky Mountains or something, I don't know. So it leads to the river. The river, I would say, is Jesus. When we get to like the full version, like the full culmination where all these things have been leading to, that's going to be Jesus. But we don't stop there. We don't just go, the Bible is the story leading us to Jesus. That's it. Because if that were it, then it wouldn't really have much meaning for us. We are, I would say, at the delta of the river, right? You know what the delta is? Again, you took 7th grade. Okay. So the delta is where everything fans out and like waters, and the Nile waters the Egyptian wilderness and the desert, and all of a sudden it's green in the desert because of the Nile delta, right? And it's this fertile land where they farm and it's great, and there's animals, and like Lion King takes place there, I think, and like all this stuff happens. Okay. So in the delta, you live in the delta of the river, you and me. We are at the receiving end of the river that is Jesus. We're at the receiving end of this story. We are the most current chapter in the story that God is writing. And we know the chapters that are to come, but God, we are like, you are at the forefront of the story of what God is doing. It's your story as well. You are part of it. You are part of this story. And we'll talk about that in a couple weeks. And then again in a couple weeks. We'll talk about these. They kind of overlap. So if you're like, you're repeating yourself, I am kind of repeating myself, kind of on purpose, and kind of because I can't not, because it's all kind of overlaps. Nevertheless, you live at the tail end of the story. So when you come to the Bible, when you come to something and you're like, how in the world? Andrew said that the whole Bible leads me to the gospel, and the whole Bible leads me somehow to Jesus. And I come to this place and it's like, and then the Syrians crossed into like the Amalekite land, and it was dry, and there were no foxes there, for they did not. And you're like, I don't even know how. How does this lead me to? It's part of the story that leads you to the gospel. It's all part of the story. Does that make sense? When you're telling a story, you never tell just the facts. That is so boring. So boring when you're just telling the facts of the story, right? If I just gave you the point, if I just said to you, right? The Bible would be like a page long if it was just, we were all sinners, and the world was broken, and Jesus came and died and made it right again. And if we believe in him, we will be with him forever in his new, right, good world, living out our purpose with him and anybody who joins themselves to him. You're like, that was like one sentence. Why should I have this whole book? Why is it 1,000 pages long? It's telling you the story of who God is. Anybody ever heard of Flannery O'Connor? Irish writer. Anyway, she was like this Christian. She's a Catholic writer. Write these really great stories that you have to just like contemplate and meditate and be like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means, but very deep, right? Somebody asked her to just summarize her story at one point, and she says, if I could summarize it for you, then I wouldn't have written a story. You can't just boil it down. How many of you have ever had you love a show or you love a movie and someone's like, oh, well, just tell me everything about that show that's 7 seasons long that you've lived with for the last 7 years of your life and watch these characters grow and develop and change. Just summarize the whole show for me and tell me the ending. And you're like, no. Come, experience with me the 7 seasons of this show that I love, that I feel like I know these people, and they're like, you have to watch the changes, and you have to and then this person, and then that thing, but this was really his brother from the future, and like you didn't know, and like you have to go through the whole experience. That's this, right? The Bible is going to take you through the whole experience. It's not just going to go, here you go. There's the facts, walk away, do with them as you please. It's going to give you the whole story. So does every little thing in the Bible, every little detail give me a gospel message? It doesn't. But it gives me the story that is the gospel message. I hope the difference between those makes sense. This is a little bit more technical, so go with me here, because some people get confused by this, and I don't know how to say it other ways. There's this thing in the Bible that it'll do that I call amplifying echoes. You don't have to worry about that. But when something, this is probably what the part that confuses people is the analogy, not the point. But I'm going to make the analogy anyway. When something echoes, it gets quieter and quieter over time. Again, earth science, we remember this, 7th grade, right? Okay. In the Bible, what will happen is that something will happen, in the Old Testament usually, something will happen, and it'll seem big, but its spiritual significance is smaller than what's coming later. So that it looks like it's getting less significant. I'm going to give you an example, but it's actually getting more spiritually significant, but it keeps happening. Here's a good example. The Israelites go into Egypt and are rescued by being in Egypt and then leave Egypt for God's true purpose for them, okay? Later, Jesus, actually a few people, I'm skipping some because Abraham does it and Isaac does it, but then before, and then the Israelites. So, there's a lot to it. But later, Jesus will go into Egypt and out of Egypt where he's rescued and then goes back to Israel for God's purpose for him. And the Bible says, when the Old Testament says, out of Egypt I have called my son, which in the Old Testament we go, yeah, your son Israel. The people of Israel are often called God's sons. Actually, in Hebrew, what we see as the people of Israel in Egypt is actually the Hebrew phrase, the sons of Israel. So it's this idea of this is God's chosen son. Okay. Out of Egypt I have called my son. The New Testament is going to go, actually, that's talking about Jesus. Out of Egypt I have called Jesus my son. Okay. And you're like, wait, the Old Testament lied to us. No, they're both true. One looks really big, right? One is like a bajillion people coming out of Egypt, parting of the Red Sea. Whoa, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. Like if you could film this, this would be amazing. The other one's like, okay, this little family and their baby went to Egypt. Big deal. It looks smaller, but it's spiritually more significant. Does that make sense a little bit? Okay, that's what's happening often in the Bible. So what's happening is the Bible's even spoon-feeding us sometimes. Hey, this is actually telling you about Jesus. Hey, yes, it's super significant that they left Egypt, but the Bible in Matthew's going to go, actually, this is more significant. Is Jesus going to come out? He's God's true son. He's going to come out for the true rescue. He's going to do the true thing that pointed to, because he's not going to overcome the Egyptians. He's going to overcome sin. He's going to rescue you to welcome in all people rather than to overcome these people. There's a bigger significance that comes later. There's a few of these. That's the easiest one. But I want you to understand is, again, the storyline. So what people sometimes do is they'll come and they'll be like, every single thing, every single detail has to point me to, and they go to weird places. No, I don't think that one gets us to the gospel. What I'm saying is that overall, the flow is going to always flow you to Jesus and the gospel. Does that, at least that concept kind of sort of maybe make sense a little bit? Ish? Okay, let's keep going. It'll make more sense. Let me give you a Where's Waldo analogy. Okay. Where's Waldo, which I heard I saw this most amazing video. It was if Where's Waldo was an audiobook. I don't know if any of you saw that. It was hilarious. And it was like a guy just listening, and it's like a man in a green shirt, a woman walking a dog, Waldo. He's all there. And it was amazing. It was so funny. I can't stop talking about it. It's okay. Where's Waldo? In a Where's Waldo picture, a lot of the tricky part is that a lot of it looks like Waldo. There's a lot of red and white stripes in there, right? So you can't scan the picture. You have to like go through in great detail because a lot of it is Waldo themed. It's Waldo themed, which reminds me what I'm looking for, but is not what I'm looking for. Does that make sense? Okay. There's even people in Where's Waldo pictures that look very much like Waldo. They might have almost what Waldo has on. There's one in the left. I can't see him from here, but there's a guy in the left who is a yellow and black version of Waldo. Instead of red and white, he's the yellow and black Waldo. Okay. So you're like, oh, close, but not Waldo. Right? Close, but not Waldo. So I could look at this picture and I could go, I don't need to find Waldo. Look how much red and white striping there is. Check, I found Waldo. The red and white striping is just to tell you, you haven't quite found Waldo yet, but yes, this is a Waldo thing, right? When I come to the Bible, I don't just go, oh, a lot of things seem to look like Jesus. That's great. The Bible is saying, no, this is Jesus' theme, and it's pointing us to Jesus, right? It's going to take us further than that. There's other people in the Bible who are like Jesus, but not quite. Like I said, Solomon. Solomon is this wise king of peace who the nations come to for wisdom. This is like Jesus, but then he's leading the people away into idolatry, and that's not like Jesus, right? And so close but no cigar over and over again until we find the true Jesus and the true Waldo who is here just to help you out and save you from the angst of you didn't get to see it. The problem is, one of the problem is, and I'm running late on time, but we'll do more next week. Part of the problem is, do I want to show this video? Then I have fewer videos next week. Maybe I'll come up with a new one. Okay. The problem is we go to places in the Bible and we go, oh, let me grab this, and this is the end goal. This piece of the puzzle is the whole puzzle. And I'll tell you how we do that, but first we're going to watch a video of a toddler.
Do it, and then you can throw it in.
Okay.
No eating the butter.
Have you seen this?
Okay. Okay. Good job, Kate. Kate, we have time. Butter. A cup of sugar, okay? Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
What is this? Sugar?
Sugar.
Okay, hold it over. Right. Wait, Kate. All right, what's next? After the sugar. Oh, it has to be packed in there, so put it in. Don't eat the brown sugar. Oh my gosh, no. Unbelievable. Stop it. My feet feel like they're stand on. We're making cookies. Crack and put it in. Oh, yep. No, we don't eat. Oh my God, that's raw egg. Okay, ready? No eating eggs. Crack and put it in. Oh no. What? No, we're not eating flour. 2 cups. This Cooking with Kate is brought to you by Arm & Hammer. Can you say Arm & Hammer? Pour it in. Cinnamon. Okay? That's not good yet. 3. Oh! What are you doing? You're mixing. Next, we put it on the pan and then we're going to put it in the oven, okay? Good job, Kate. Good job. Okay. Let me see how much you got in your mouth. Oh my gosh. Kate, show them what you got in your mouth. Very good, Kate. Cooking with Nana. Yay, cooking with Nana. We can turn it off for now and then turn it back on when we get a batch out of the oven. I never cook. do that. Are you gonna eat them?
Yeah.
You're gonna eat one?
Yeah.
Oh! Oh! Oh, you're gonna take a bite of each? Oh, for Nana? Thank you. So delicious.
So when we come to the Bible, it's like you're given the ingredients of this final product, okay? And what we do is we go, no, I want to eat the baking soda by itself, right? And let me give you an example. I remember when I was a kid, so if you're like, no, I like this kind of thing. So did I. I remember listening to the radio. It was a thing where you would there was a dial and you would, if you're younger than me, but we listened to the radio in the car on my way to San Diego with my dad, and we were listening to a pastor I won't name. This is not that he's bad, but this is just not how I would teach the Bible nowadays. But he's like, hey, the Israelites crossed the Jordan River to accept God's blessings. What is your Jordan River? What are the blessings in your life that you need to accept? And so what are you going to overcome in your life in order to get to God's blessings for you? And I was like, yes! 13-year-old Andrew was like, I'm going to think about that. That sounds great. I would like some blessings, right? Years later, I was like, oh, that's an ingredient in the story. That's not the cookie. Let's go with brown sugar. It's yummy. I like eating brown sugar. Brown sugar is yummy, but it's not a cookie. I'd rather have a cookie. I'd rather wait until we get to the whole thing. And so what happens often is we go to the Bible and we take an ingredient that hasn't quite cooked yet, and we go, I'm going to eat this part. I just want this part on its own. And the Bible's like, no, wait. We're making Jesus cookies. We're making gospel cookies. And you're like, no, thank you. I just want to eat these semi-sweet chocolate, even though semi-sweet chocolate is not very good. But I'm just going to eat that, please. And I think what we need to do is go, wait. Let's watch the cookies cook. Let's wait until we get to the gospel part. Let's wait until the Jesus part, because we don't really have to. We don't have to. We're not thousands of years ago. We're like, I wonder what God is doing with this. I don't know. We're at this end. Is this how you read history? Yes. We're at this end, and we're going, oh, God has done this and accomplished this and built this, and we're at the receiving end of this. Let's enjoy the final product, the cookies, the Jesus, the gospel, okay? All right. So we take events, people, teachings in the Bible. We go, what does this say about Jesus, or what has Jesus done with these things, and how does that lead to us? All roads, I say in the Bible, lead to Jesus, and from Jesus come all things. All roads lead to Jesus, and from Jesus come all things. All roads in the Bible do not lead to me. All roads in the Bible do not lead to you. All roads in the Bible lead to Jesus, and from Jesus come all things. I say often, if you're in my class, you get sick of me saying it, the Bible is not all about you, but it is all for you. It's not all about you, but it is all for you. And when we try to make it all about me, I actually miss what's actually there. I miss Jesus, and if I miss Jesus, where are my blessings going to come from? And we'll keep talking about this idea. So we have that Jesus is he's our king, he's our prophet, he's our priest, he's the true Israel, we said. He's the lawgiver, he's the true temple. And we kind of take that again up into the cloud, and from that it rains down on us. Okay. I want you to sit with this question. I know you don't have anything to do over the next week, so I want you to sit with this question and think about nothing else for a week. Does it matter if the events in the Bible actually ever happened? Does it matter if they actually ever happened, and why? If I came up here and I said, it doesn't matter if the resurrection historically happened. Brian and I talked about that for a couple weeks back in April, right around Easter. Does it matter if the resurrection happened? You as good Calvary people should be like, yes, it matters. It matters because if the resurrection didn't happen, then Jesus, what? He rose in my heart like Mufasa lived on in Simba's heart, and therefore, I don't know, I can try to be like him. I don't really know, but he still died. We're still going to die, and death is just hopelessness for me, right? If he actually rose from the dead and that actually happened, then the Bible says he actually overcame death for us, and we actually have hope. Okay, there's an actually in there all throughout. Similarly, I would say, does it matter if, that's an easy one, right? That's kind of T-ball. That's me like putting a ball in a tee, and you're like, well, yeah, that matters. Okay, if I can get you to agree with that, maybe I can get you to agree with more things. Does it then matter if for example, Abraham really made a covenant with God in this miraculous way where God put him to sleep and he kills a cow and he smoke and there's fire and they go through the cow and it's weird in Genesis, I think 17. And does it matter if that ever took place? Because here's what happens. We take the Bible. I got to end here pretty soon. We take the Bible and we turn it into an idea that I need to do. Okay, I need to do something with this. When it becomes just a moral idea, just a fable, we've missed everything that's going on there. Aesop, you ever heard of Aesop's fables? Aesop would make these moral tales, right? One of them, the only one I can remember off the top of my head, is the tortoise and the hare, right? And the tortoise and the hare is a story of a tortoise, and he's going to run a race against a hare who's a rabbit, and the rabbit is like, no, I'm going to outrun you, and he's so cocky about it that he ends up taking a nap, and the tortoise wins the race because he's slow and steady. And so the point is either maybe it's slow and steady, win the race. Maybe the point is be humble and not boastful. Maybe the point is be persistent and don't burn yourself out. I don't know what the point is, but does it matter if a tortoise and a hare ever really had a race in ancient Greece? Doesn't matter. Not the point. Are we expected to believe that a tortoise and a rabbit raced and one of them learned a moral lesson? No. We're not expected to believe that that's literally actually historically true. Here's the problem. If the Bible is really about you and what you, if it's first about you and what you need to do morally and what you need to do and you need to learn these lessons, and that's the point, then if that's the case, it doesn't matter if it actually happened. What I could do with that is I could say, Abraham, who never existed, in the story that's not real, trusted God, and therefore the point is you should trust God like the story. This is exactly how many of us read the Bible. And what happens is we think we're reading it literally, and we think we're applying it to our life. And what happens is we actually took it, made it not literal. We made it just an analogy, just a metaphor, just a fable, while we are outraged that people would see the Bible as just a metaphor, just an analogy, and just a fable. You and I often read it and we make it just a metaphor, just an analogy, and just a fable, because all it is to us is a moral lesson we need to live up to and learn from. I'm not saying, please don't walk away this week and go, this is where people get confused. Andrew said the Bible does not have moral lessons in it, and we do not have to obey it, and we don't have to apply it. That's not what I said. I said, and we're going to play this out over the next couple of weeks. You're like, stop making me come back. I'm going to just keep making you come. It's all part of a whole. You got to just keep coming back. That's not where we go first. That's never where we go first. That cannot be where we go first. And actually, it might show you that that's not even always where we end up. We don't even always end up with, this is what I need to do. This is the moral lesson. This is it, right? There is so much more going on than that. And you're like, what could possibly be? Come back. But I really want you to reflect on this. In John 5:39, Jesus says, you search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. And it is they that bear witness about who? About him. About him. About him. I'll tell the story super quickly and I'll end on this. Several years ago when I taught this class, I had somebody who I don't think you would ever run into, who at the end, there's a project in the real class. So you're like, this is easy. That one has a project at the end. And you have to reflect on a passage of your choice and how what it means when you put it through these questions that I'll give you to think about and blah, blah, blah later. And this one person said, this was my story. That was really significant in my life. And now that I see it's not really about me, it's really about Jesus as our Messiah, as our rescuer, as our hero. And I almost started clapping. And then they said, now it's less significant because it's not about me. I don't like it as much. That heart, which I'm glad that person was so honest, but that heart, I think that they were willing to say out loud, we quietly, that's how we read the Bible. Oh, but I like it being ultimately about me, first about me, mostly about me. I want to be David again. I don't want to be a Philistine. I want to be David. But we lose so much when we take God out of his place in the Bible, when we take Jesus out of his spot in the story, put ourselves there, and let me tell you this, and we'll talk about this more, as with everything, you cannot bear that burden. You cannot bear the burden of being the hero of the story. You cannot. You will be crushed trying to be the hero of your story and of everybody else's. And if you've tried to live that life, you know what I'm talking about. You cannot bear that burden. Somebody else has to be the hero of the story. Somebody else has to be that central character for you. Somebody else has to be the author and the finisher and the champion for you. And so we'll continue this next week. Please come back. A few more weeks. We'll go through July, and I hope that this is ultimately going to unlock something for you. It's really late, so let me pray super quick.